In this video, we're going to consider population genetics and human evolution, and we're going to look at the evidence that we use from DNA as well as other examples of evidence to make models of how humans have evolved. So in this image, we have a range of primate skulls, and a primate is one of the great apes, which includes humans. They have opposable thumbs, they have highly mobile and rotating shoulder joints, forward-facing eyes with stereoscopic vision, a reduced snout and olfactory centre in the brain, a large skull with a large cerebellum, as well as 5 digits with nails instead of claws. If we classify Homo sapiens, which is our Latin name, which literally means wise man. You can see a few key features there in that classification. So obviously we are in the animal kingdom, we are vertebrates, mammals, and there's the word primate that we just discussed, as well as some important terms here. So hominids. These include humans, great apes, gibbons, gorillas, chimpanzees, and these diverged from Old World monkeys about 20 to 25 million years ago. So Old World monkeys are monkeys with tails. And hominins, which is down here, and the subfamily, these include all the bipedal Homo and Australopithecus genus variants. So if we look here at a timeline for some hominins, you'll see we are still alive. So we are extant, we are here. And everything else is extinct on this. So Neanderthals are here, so Homo sapiens overlapped with Neanderthals. Here's Homo erectus, so it means upright man. And then lots of other names that you may have come across, fossils that have been found and characterized according to their anatomy and given different classifications based on size of brain of the skull and length of limbs and other artifacts found with them. So we try, when we find skulls or other bones or evidence, we try to create evolutionary trees to explain how different species are connected, and this is one example here. There are actually lots of models. Even with all of the current evidence, there are still lots of different models, and this is because it's actually quite hard to make a definite decision on how things are related. The fossils we do have are very few in number. They are incomplete, so you rarely get a full fossil of a specimen. Often there's just like a small portion of a skull or maybe one leg bone, and they use computer modeling or common sense to try to build a better picture. So you can imagine that different scientists hotly debate their version of what it should be, but often it's open to interpretation. If we look here at 2 possible evolutionary tree models, there's the African replacement model and the multi-regionalism model. I'll explain what's going on. So in the African replacement model, so this is the common ancestor. You see that's true for both of these models, and that was Homo habilis, which was about 2 million years ago. And out of Africa, there was a migration. So in this model on the left, we have 2 major migrations. So we have a migration of Homo erectus about 1 million years ago, and then a movement of Homo sapiens a little bit later on. So in the African replacement model, so there was a movement of one lot of anatomically modern humans out of Africa, which evolved into Neanderthals and Homo erectus. These then die out and are replaced, hence the replacement model, by Homo sapiens, which then move into Europe and Asia and Africa. But on the right, the multi-regionalism model, there's only one major migration out of Africa, and then there is interconnection, so interbreeding and sharing of culture all the way along as Neanderthals eventually share a common ancestor with modern humans, and same with Homo erectus. And that is one reason why they think there's a lot of Neanderthal DNA in modern humans, etc. So these are two distinct models. There's probably something in between going on. So when we're making models, we have to obviously use evidence to help inform how we're going to put the models together. The first major piece of evidence that scientists use is fossil evidence. And it's not just the fossils, it's the soil around the fossils, the rocks around the fossils, and any other artifacts, like maybe burial or examples of culture in terms of like beads or artifacts in a grave. Have they been buried in any particular way? Are there marks on the bones that might indicate how they might have been cut up, or have they lived with a disease? Are there previous wounds that have healed over time? So there are all sorts of things you can tell from bones. So when they are looking at fossils, they use technology to measure. So then they can compare different samples from different parts of the world. They use microscopes, scanning electron microscopes, to look at the surface of bones and the surface of teeth to tell you something about the lifestyle of the person, or maybe their diet from the teeth. They then look inside the fossil bones to look at age. So they can look at how the growth patterns in the bone. They can even spot ancient diseases that might have afflicted that person by comparing it to bone samples today with diseases that we know have happened to a person today. They can also use complex computers with CT scan technology, and you take partial skulls and reconstruct them so that they can pretend they had a full skull and then look at them better. Other types of evidence that we can look at is molecular evidence, and this is where it links in with the module that we're doing, because there are three different types of DNA evidence that we can look at. We can look at the whole genome, nuclear DNA, and we can track small changes in genes in different populations around the world and get some idea of how closely related they are in terms of their last common ancestor, and therefore make some predictions. That's getting harder and harder as people move around the world now, but it's something we can apply to older samples. We can ignore most of the nuclear DNA and just concentrate on the Y chromosome, because Y chromosomes are passed from father to son. This gives us information about the male pattern of inheritance. Or we can look at mitochondrial DNA, because mitochondria always comes in the egg with all the cytoplasm. This gives us details about the female line of inheritance. So this suggests, if we look at mitochondrial DNA, that there is a common female ancestor of all people, an African Eve, like the first woman, about 150,000 years ago. Or at least some scientists say that that is true. So if you put all these bits of evidence together, you can draw a pattern on a globe showing human migration and evolution over time. So there's quite a lot of information on this image. We have information about a timeline, so 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens started to move out of Africa following these patterns. So 40,000 years ago, we're in Europe and we are coexisting with other Homo species, and then there's movement around the globe. And you see we're quite interested in this area of the world. So migration into Australia. At the moment, they're saying 50,000 years ago. I've seen information about 60,000 years ago with Mungo Man. But we probably left the common ancestor of people in Australia today probably left Africa about sort of before 70,000 years ago. So probably about 72,000 years ago. And they last shared a common ancestor with the Papuan people here probably about 60,000 years ago. And how can they move across the seas? Well, at different times in the global history, we've had different sea levels, so they've been able to move across. And one interesting bit is here, when the sea levels were a lot lower, there's actually a land bridge across there. And similarly, down just north of Australia, that was the same too. So thinking about the different contentious pieces of evidence, so even if we have hard evidence, how you interpret those can be subject to debate. But it's an interesting one, using our genetic technologies today to play into all the different other pieces of evidence we have from anatomy and cultural changes. It's an interesting evolving story.